Okay, we are recording. Maybe this will be a short one. We'll see. It's a short chapter, at least, chapter 13 of Star Trek: The Motion Picture novelization. Yeah, because it basically spans just like a few minutes. Spock has arrived at the turbo lift of the bridge, so everyone sees him. Some surprised by this, and he then just walks over to the Science Council, Science Station, and basically asks Decker to move, and Decker's in awe of Spock. It's actually a little funny because a little bit later, when he's seeing how Spock is doing, so Decker's upset with Kirk and doesn't see him as much as a hero as he once did. So yeah, but Decker seeing Spock and being in his aura, being so awed by Spock, and is actually wondering, did Kirk somehow arrange this? But and Kirk did not. This was just Spock arriving, but it did still give Decker a certain air, a certain feeling from going through the old logs that Kirk does in fact somehow just achieve the impossible. That Spock would just spontaneously appear because he needs to be here, because Kirk needs him, and just so he is starting to look up to Kirk again. Not just because of that, but also because Spock is Spock. Spock is one of the. You would not have the success of Kirk without Spock. I guess way to put it. He is that significant a character, which also does remind me of one thing that I think I mentioned before. One of my criticisms for the TNG cast movies. The TNG show does a pretty good job of having a family amongst the crew. Not always, but pretty good job of that. The original series, though, again, there's a family there, and it does exist in the TOS cast movies as well. But one thing that I feel is also definitely true, though McCoy is the quietest of the three, it is a triumvirate. It is Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. They are a trio. And even when you have in some of the episodes that Kirk and Spock are off doing something, McCoy still has some involvement. Like, he is still important in one way or another. If only just to be frustrating Spock. And I'm just trying, because I was like, whenever Spock is gone, whenever Kirk is gone, those two do butt heads. And it's just one of those things where it's like, that is their nature. They are going to do that without Kirk in the middle. But at the same time, if McCoy is gone, because he is important here, Kirk would potentially not be able to relax from Spock's seriousness. Or also might just fall to Spock's rationality. Similarly, if Spock weren't there, Kirk would not be able to consider certain options. It truly is a trio there. Whereas in the TNG movies, unfortunately, it's pretty damn clear as you watch through them. It's Picard and Data. That's it. No one else. Everyone else might still be part of the family, but they're like Scotty, they're like Uhura, they're like Sulu, they're like Chekhov. They're present. They're not as important. And in fact, in some of them, in some of the TNG cast movies, it even feels like you could just completely replace the character. That is, like, even in Generations, that if you could just somehow provide a different explanation than Geordi's visor, Geordi isn't even that important. And despite his importance to Data, to the story, it's like if you could come up with some other way for them to spy, the Klingons to spy on the Enterprise. Yeah. So anyway, yes, Decker did not have that reference from McCoy. Shame on Decker. Bones deserves it. Anyway, one thing that is interesting that's noted, and oh, hang on just a sec. Okay. I just want to make sure the order of things. You don't pick up on this in the movie. Decker's actually doubly impressed by Spock because when Spock gets to the consoles, the Science Council, just one. You know what? Actually, okay. Ignore the other keys, but typical QWERTY keyboard here with staggered columns. Hang on, let me. No. There we go. Might be a little easier to see that way. So imagine that that's basically the original layout of the Science Console buttons, and this is the new one. Which, by the way, this is still QWERTY, but as you can see, it's ortholinear. Come on, there we go. It's ortholinear. It also has Elvish font on there. Don't worry about that. It's still QWERTY. But it's, despite that change, Spock just sits down and is immediately proficient at it and just putting in everything because he's there to help with the warp intermix, because he says he's been monitoring communications with Starfleet, which, when you think about it, is actually really scary. I get it's Spock, but he is actually a civilian at the moment. He is not active. Kirk even has to tell Chekhov, mark him as reactive and assigned here, which, hey, he's an admiral, he can do that. So it is. I didn't actually put this in the notes. I'm just talking about it now. He should not have had access. Those should be secure channels, especially when we consider that the Enterprise is on an emergency mission with the entity, with the intruder, reader, that they don't know enough about. So they're trying to control information. At least they were earlier. Yeah, there's no way just a random dude should have access to that. Spock is not a random dude, but as far as Starfleet is concerned, hey, you're not part of the game anymore. You're not here anymore. Yeah, so anyway, but he's there, and everyone's like, awesome to have you back, great to have you back. And it's like, Spock is even like, I would like to be the science officer. And Kirk is like, Decker, you got a problem with, I mean, it's like, does my executive officer have a problem with that? Not at all. It's like, why would you even ask? I obviously would not have a problem with this. This guy's awesome. And then Spock's like, can I go speak to the engineer so that we can work on getting the warp drive figured out? And it has a little bit there about Kirk feeling like, okay, getting to the groove of things again. It's like, hey, that I need to show that I can handle when things just happen. Bad things and good things. This is a good thing that, can't predict. It's like, need to show that, and just says, Spock, do whatever gets me warp drive fastest. So then he goes to the turbolift doors. Fortunately, it had just come up because, for whatever reason, McCoy and Nurse Chapel have arrived. I'm going to keep calling her Nurse Chapel instead of Dr. Chapel. My apologies. It's just, that's what I'm used to as being her character. Anyway, they arrive, and they're both a little surprised by this. Bones makes a more positive comment. Chapel, though, because in the original series, she is attracted to him, is interested in him, but nothing ever comes of it. One thing to be clear about is actually one reason why I don't like how Kirk came very near intervening, because Spock is being cold to everyone. It makes some sense, because it even described when he arrived, it seemed he did have an air about him of almost serenity, that he had achieved almost serenity. And while he hasn't achieved serenity, he has still the dignity of it, which is likely good for him. But she's being cold to everyone. And he seemed to be committing deliberate cruelty. No, it's not deliberate, but it is also, if you just go with, well, it's been 3 years, he's been on Vulcan, I think it's easy enough to understand, to guess he doesn't even know he's being cruel. But anyway, Kirk came very near intervening but held back, realizing that Spock could not be blamed for Chapel's fantasies concerning him. I don't like that, okay? I don't, because maybe it's just the romantic in me. But in the original series, he knew. Spock was aware. I mean, it open secret kind of thing, where it's like Kirk knew, Bones knew, Spock knew that Chapel was attracted to him, was interested in him, all that. But Spock was inaccessible in that way, unavailable in that way. But she still had those feelings. It was just pure unrequited love there, but there was still a respect between them. It was like they both had a respect for each other. Like I feel like there is an episode It might be a mock time. I don't remember. It might be a different one. Where, oh wait, no. There's also in Plato's Stepchildren, where they are forced to kiss, and that it's really, when you consider the unrequited love there, that's actually a horrible thing. Because they're being forced to kiss. It's not willing, and so it, even for her, it's like, yeah, okay. I need to just get to the point. There's a respect there. Kirk should recognize that respect, and shouldn't be referring to Chapel's fantasies, okay? That even if it is accurate in a cold way, like, not the wrong word, this is still not how I would ever describe it, because it does seem dismissive of them. Because, no, she genuinely, the character genuinely seemed to have a love for him. So, to reduce it to just her fantasies, no, it's I do not like that. Okay, there's another thing I want to talk about, but let me read this. Kirk could see a pattern emerging, except as duty situations required. Spock obviously intended to completely and impartially ignore every member of the starship's crew. The reasons for that might turn out to be as interesting as whatever it was that brought him here, perhaps as painful too. Kirk decided that it would not hurt Spock to be reminded that pain could be two-edged. Wait until the Vulcan was in mid-step into the waiting turbo lift, then, Mr. Spock, welcome aboard. Spock hesitated for an instant. Kirk knew that his voice had carried enough sincerity to call forth a memory or two in the Vulcan's mind. So basically, Kirk is trying to snap him out of it a little bit, which, you know, that's fine, and that is appropriate. I mean, there's also one thing that I'm just thinking. Well, the thought occurred to me a little bit ago when I was talking about this. Can you imagine that Vulcans were actually walking around like what Spock is trying to behave as here? It also makes me wonder, because one thing that I also want to talk about, there's a reference to Pon farr in here, which is one of those aspects of Star Trek lore that I don't like the emphasis on. I think I've ranted on that before. Let me just try to not rant and just say that the idea of them that the males, at least the Vulcan males, every 7 years, once it starts, because when it starts seems dependent on just the person, and once it starts, they every 7 years must mate. One aspect, the thing about the Star Trek lore that I don't like is how some people take that as that's the only time that they mate. It's like, and I'm pretty sure I have said before, no, they would mate whenever it was logical. But it's also, I've got issues with Pon farr because it makes no sense that Sarah could have possibly mated, taken Amanda, right? Spock's mother, human mother, as a wife. That should have not been a thing. But anyway. Yeah, I'll just read the whole thing. Although Kirk had been as dumbfounded as the others at his arrival, he was pleased to note that he had recovered first and was now handling all this with some degree of command presence. But it still felt painful to be reminded so powerfully and unexpectedly of his friendship and affection for Spock. Theirs had been the touching of two minds which the old poets of Spock's home planet had proclaimed as superior even to the wild physical love which affected Vulcans every 7th year during Pon farr. Technically, that's not true. However, Spock's new demeanor warned Kirk to stay clear of personal considerations for the moment. I just say it's not true because I think maybe in Enterprise they put T'Pol through it, but there was never an indication that, true, not that we get a whole bunch of Vulcan lore, but never an indication prior to that, as I can recall, that Vulcan women go through Pon farr. that it's just the males, it's just the men. But to be fair, in Amok Time, there is a mental linking. They do talk about that basically he's been betrothed to whatever her name was since they were children, and she is connected, so she knows the moment it starts for him. So it is not that they are free of the experience, but the physiological need that, if unsatisfied, will lead to their death seems to be like the actual pon farr itself is for the men. So, like, technically, it doesn't affect Vulcans. It's just Vulcan men. But it's also, this sentence makes no sense to me. This comparison that the Vulcan poets of old would say that this was a superior relationship in the broad sense. I mean, you could also say superior love as well. It is the love of these two friends, that they are as brothers, Spock and Kirk. But yeah, the Vulcan poets saying that it is superior even to pon farr. It's like, what are you talking about? How is there a comparison here? One is like a physiological need that is so hardwired into Vulcans that it defeats their commitment to logic. I actually am curious if the try and remember what the ritual was that Spock was going through. Nope, can't think of it. To purge all emotions. I wonder if that actually would be able to defeat it or not. Don't know. But in any case, it still is. They are wildly different. Just absolutely wildly different. So why would there have? I mean, any comparison should have been a. Yeah, hang on, just checking one thing. This has been touching two minds, claimed as superior. Even yes, if it weren't the term superior, it could be put another way. But it's like clearly it's superior. I would expect Vulcan poets to consider pon farr as in fact very low in terms of love and relationship, because it's just a physiological desire. Well, physiological need, I should say, to the point that you would kind of expect that, for how it's described in Amok Time at least, if you had a prehistoric Vulcan that went through this, and it's like and it's early enough that there's no concept of marriage, he's just taking whatever woman's near him. I mean, it's like, let's be real. That's what pon farr would lead to. But they did ritualize it such that that would not be the case. But it's just, and even then, they still have an out. So if the woman doesn't want to mate, doesn't want to get married, well, fight to the death. And that fight itself, the killing, is also a release from the pon farr. So it's like, this is wildly different. I don't know why you describe it as superior, because clearly it is. Now, if it were necessary, I think. Hang on just a second. That I could see as a better way. I'm not sure what would be the better word there to use in place of superior. Necessary doesn't quite feel right. But by that I just mean that Spock and Kirk, that Spock needs his friendship with Kirk. That they are so, their minds have touched so closely, have touched so much, that they are so strongly brothers that it is truly, they cannot be independent of the other for long. That it is like something is missing. Which, in some ways, I mean, it's like, pon farr is a physiological desire that it's mentioned in Amok Time. Spock will die if this isn't completed. Right? If he doesn't go through the ritual one way or the other. So you could describe it that way. That it is, even though it is not passionate in the way pon farr is, it still is I do need this person in my life. I need this connection because we are so complementary. I wish I could think of a better way to put that. I'm also just thinking, I mean, are there any examples out there for two people that were like that weren't necessarily married? Because, I mean, ideally, that is what marriages should be, right? That it is that one needs the other, and both ways. Um, I'm just trying to think. Are there any other examples in? Would that kind of work? It's different. It's like Samwise and Frodo. It's no, that's a different. The importance to each other might be the same, but that's a different kind of relationship. Mm, yeah, I can't really think of another. Sorry, my brain is also a little burned out from working on various things today. Um, yeah, I don't think that that was a well crafted sentence there concerning the old poets because as I said, it's completely different the two experiences. So at least for how it's been described throughout Star Trek. So yeah, I am not pleased with that. But for the for the most part, and also the fantasy, the Chapel's fantasies, yeah. But I mean, those are really the only two true criticisms I have for this. The rest, I mean, like the different consoles, like that is kind of interesting. That Spock could just come up and start using them. Which, by the way, with the whole ortholinear layout to that keyboard, I will just mention. You know, let me toot my own horn a little bit. I when I first sat down, not actually with that, but it's over here. This one, which is 40%, so it's 4 rows by 12 across. So I don't have a number row on here. I have full access to it. I just need to activate layers. You know, sort of like how Shift changes the character on the number row. Same kind of deal, but it's different key that changes things. I am a touch typist, not a homo typist. I'm a touch typist. Homo typist is also a version of that. It's also kind of touch typist, but it's a little different. For me at least, where it's like I genuinely don't need to look. I just know where the keys are on QWERTY and can easily move around and still move around without looking. Adapting to this 40% ortholinear that I just pulled up. That's actually my daily drive and it has been for a while. I also have a 60% right behind it, so that's just like here. Hang on. Let me. Okay. Okay. That's from this side to here, and just the number row down. So it's basically from shift to shift. From well, escape is sometimes there, but from like number row down to spacebar, it's just that portion. Um, Adapting to both those was actually very easy. The 60% I have there used to be my daily driver, but the 40% I moved on to so comfortably. I'm actually, I do find it surprising. There. Okay. I was bumping buttons and need to make sure I didn't break anything on the test system. I didn't. I just, yeah. Um, so it is. I can definitely see someone being able to do that, but it is not easy. I mean, don't. It's only the fact that I am a touch typist I could do that. Like if I put that keyboard in either this one or the 50% that I pulled up earlier with the Elvish on there, that does have the number row. If I put that down, if I swapped somebody's keyboard for that, even if they were home row typist, I could believe. And don't get me wrong on home row. It's just I could still believe though that because position is so important with a home row typist, like they need to the keys here and they expect certain movements to take them to certain keys. I believe I could do that and they would hate me for a while. Um, but for me, because it was just I just know where I muscle memory for where keys are relative to each other. The angles are less important. I adapt it very easily. Yeah. I will say though, sucks for gaming. At least the 40% does. Well, I mean, it's like no numbers, and like so many games, they expect you to have numbers. Though I will use the other one, which yeah, that's a 50%. Not that anyone will ever watch this, and certainly not watch this far. If somebody wants me to do a video on keyboards, I'm willing to do it. All right, I've built a number of custom mechanical keyboards. this is the 40% is a Pi 40 from 1UP Keyboards. That's what the base kit is. The switches I also got from them. Keycaps I did not. There's well, if there's interest, I'll do that video. But the other one is the Pi 50 from 1UP Keyboards. I also I've got an old 1UP 60 hot swap. Also old. They now have Pi 60, so just a new version, 6% keyboards. Got that there. I've got another one over there. And then I've got an NK65. I'm very happy with all of them, and I got more switches. I do want to build more. It's just want to see certain things, certain PCBs, certain board designs to put them on. But yeah, I like my keyboards. Okay, it's not just because I like writing. I enjoy building them. And seriously, okay, some of you out there, you might be like, oh yeah, I've typed on a mechanical keyboard. I know how that's nice. No. Okay, there's mechanical keyboards, like, you know, the full size that I've been pulling up. There's that, which by the way, those are Gatoron Browns. There's that, and then there's custom mechanical keyboards with other switches. So like, I have Duroc T1s in the Pi 40. I had never used them before. I decided, yeah, I'll solder them and use it. I've been so happy with that. The only thing I do kind of sort of wish I had lubricated them, because at times they're a little scratchy, but by and large, they're great. I love that tactility. My favorite switches are the W4s. I also have some Purple Panda switches, which Texi Purple Panda, 1UP Keyboards has them. Those are like close second to the W4s, which are silent tactiles. They are radically different. Okay, I'm saying if you got the time and the money, they can get expensive. Sorry. Seriously, custom mechanical keyboards are so nice if you're typing on them. And by the way, some of this stuff I soldered. Some of it, nope. You can buy it. It's basically ready, and it's hot swap. You just buy the switches, push them in, you're good. Put the keycaps on the. It's awesome. I love it. So yeah, I not for this video. I should be stopping. But yeah, it's mechanical keyboards are good. So, yeah, relatively short chapter. I'm guessing we're going to get a little bit of a time skip in the next one, because I do kind of remember in the movie, it's almost like montage, where we then see Spock working with Scotty in engineering, trying to get it up and running. I don't really remember what will follow from that. But yeah, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so see you next time.